Today we're going to be talking to President and Founder Darryl Keeton of Sensagrate. Thanks for joining us, Darryl.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you, and I would love to get some context about what your company is and what led you to starting.
Sure. So Sensagrate started around our fourth year now, and it really came on the mission of what's happening in the new world of autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, and identifying a gap where a lot of autonomous vehicles are testing with human drivers, but what happens when you remove that human element. As we've started talking to customers and identifying opportunities, we've seen that there's still a lot of demand that needs to be solved for current drivers today. So we have a product called SensaVision. That's a real-time software and data collection for intelligent transportation systems to help reduce congestion, improve safety, and our end goal is to help save lives.
Wow. I mean, that's definitely a lot to be merged into one company with so many different components and factors that go into that being successful. What led you to starting this, and what inspired you?
Prior to Sensagrate, I had my own consulting business where I was helping small businesses between 1 and 2 million raise capital, or not raise capital, generate revenue over $10 million. And so I was really inspired by, working with entrepreneurs and seeing their businesses grow and scale. I've always had like kind of a entrepreneur spirit for creating a tech company. I didn't know what it was at the time, but really being influenced through transportation engineers I was helping in Colorado. That state was doing a lot of stuff in smart cities, smart infrastructure solutions, and connected vehicle. And then being in the backyard of Arizona, we saw a lot of stuff with autonomous vehicles. So I kind of just thought to myself, where is there a gap or a potential solution that needs to be to help all this prosper and happen, knowing that it is a long roadway, but the potential for growth and scale to solve, a global challenge. So Sensagrate was really born off of seeing the demand of the challenges that cities had with adapting new technology, but also trying to, what we learned was that there still needed to be solutions around mobility and transportation and reducing congestion that can also help with the adoption of autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles as they come into market. So Sensagrate turned into a software providing smart infrastructure solutions. And now we're focusing primarily on data collection and analytics, but all that data and analytics also can get translated to training autonomous vehicles too.
I mean, you bring up a really good point when you had mentioned, originally being a different state and coming to Arizona. I just would love to know how receptive our state has been to maybe autonomous vehicles and how that's compared to other places and how that factored into you guys being in Arizona.
So Arizona is very friendly for autonomous vehicles. I think it's probably top 3, definitely behind San Francisco in testing and Michigan. But I think it's great because we've had multiple companies that even have their proving grounds here. Waymo's really set their headquarter here for proving out their model. Cruise is back driving around. Nero did a successful pilot. Now you're seeing them doing projects in other states, I believe in Austin or Houston, for Domino's Pizza. So the adoption of it is going well. The integration of it and scaling it is a challenge because of policies, safety, and other concerns and challenges that still have to be met. And that's where we come into play to really be a smart infrastructure solution that can help prepare for the adoption. And also our long-term goal is to be a infrastructure to vehicle communication platform. So our projects today are focusing around reducing congestion, but also improving safety, such as pedestrian safety, cyclist safety.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to lead into next, is just the general benefits with autonomous vehicles and some of the safety aspects that come with that. And really the pros, although people are probably hesitant to say, yes, I want to go with autonomous vehicles, there has to be so many benefits. And I'd love to just kind of run through maybe some of the things that people don't think of when they think of autonomous vehicles and some of the benefits that come with that.
Sure. The one that I think of most are those people with disabilities or don't have a means for first mile, last mile access. So like Waymo, what I like about it is they partnered with America Blind Association. I butchered the name of the organization, but they basically are helping understand how people that are blind can utilize self-driving cars to be more mobile and get around safer and quicker versus having to use alternative means, which most have leaned to family or friends to come pick them up. There are ride sharing platforms, but how can you benefit it for those that need to have that on-demand access, and being able to help them travel safely to their destination? I think when it comes down to like fleet management and delivery, this rapid increase of on-demand delivery for food, shipping, Amazon is really, it's going to increase our congestion, unfortunately, because of the utilization of curbside. So we have to be able to identify how autonomous vehicles can fit in to take goods and means across the city without having to reduce congestion, because Uber and Lyft came in promoting that they'll reduce congestion. Actually, congestion increased by 30% because they were double parking or letting people out and dropping people off, and traffic's building up behind them. Other benefits of autonomous vehicles is the potential to not having any incidences that results in injuries or accidents. So helping decrease the amount of people that are involved in collisions that are fatal or with high injuries will be really helpful too.
So you had mentioned, different people ordering food, Amazon, those different services that are providing those. I mean, I have to assume that there's an appetite for it, but how big is that appetite for those, platforms to be able to have autonomous vehicles?
Um, I'm not an expert on the AV side, so I couldn't tell you what the appetite is, but based on demand and knowing how human behavior is changing and population growths in urban cities are rapidly increasing. For example, look where you guys are at in Galvanize in downtown Phoenix, how much that's grown. And downtown Phoenix and that corridor doesn't have many exits or roads based on the growth. You can also look at ASU and Tempe campus, downtown Tempe, how much is growing upwards. It's just creating more and more traffic flow, pedestrian flow. So we have to start thinking about how can we use other means to get around and be mobile, but also promoting people to use bikes and walking and other transportation, carpooling, ride sharing platforms to be able to move around. But there's a lot of convenience it can provide for people that may not have a means for a ride, and how to get access, and also improving the first mile, last mile challenges a lot of people have. So a lot of people can take a bus or the light rail or subway station, but then they still have to get an extra distance because that stop doesn't get them to where they need to go. So autonomous vehicles can be that point A to point B last mile solution. So there was a use case with Waymo and the Valley Metro where they were picking up and dropping off employees from Valley Metro at the light rail station. They get them conveniently quicker to their last mile destination.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes me think about maybe about 2 years ago when there was a Comic-Con or some version, maybe more than that. It's been so many years. But when I was mapping my route, I was like, oh, I can go here and do all these things without actually needing to drive. But there's like a half a mile or a mile, and it was like 110 degrees. And I really was debating, I'm like, is it worth it? But then I also would feel weird about calling a Lyft for that short of a distance, calling an individual, having their time to help me with that and the time that it would take waiting for a person, whatever their routes were. So I mean, I can definitely see case studies, especially in those settings too, where there are some major benefits, and also avoiding congestion in the sense of being able to have people not have to be lingering, waiting, the drop off, the logistics that go into, someone else being behind the wheel.
Correct. But you're not outside of AVs, you're seeing mobility change a lot. Like look at the platforms of e-scooters and e-bikes that are coming out. They're even doing like mini cars, smaller cars that like go, and some others. And there will be some that are even doing like motorcycles, so or scooters, besides the e-scooters that we see now. So there's a lot of different concepts of what I believe in the American side we took advantage of, and we're just really dependent on cars. But now to your point about how do you get to that extra half mile in the heat, there'll be multiple more solutions. And so it's not just only adopting and preparing for autonomous vehicles, but these new promotions and forms of mobility that people will have access to. Younger generations are not eagerly as excited as I was to get a car.
Yeah.
Right? So now we have to start adapting to those generations on top of generations that are more codependent on vehicles. But it's a shift that's going to take many, many years. But we also have to have the infrastructure to be part of that solution.
Yeah, I mean, it even makes me think about you're paying for insurance each month if you have a car. And if you're someone who doesn't drive as much, I mean, that is a hefty cost that can come with that. And honestly, the cost could, I mean, depending on how mainstream autonomous vehicles get, could be completely offset by being able to not have a car.
Correct.
So I guess one of the things that I'd really love to get into is, I mean, this is a very exciting concept, and there has to be other people who are trying to figure out how to do this. How long have you guys been kind of getting into this market, and what do you think the future looks like for your company specifically?
So in the beginning, we definitely were focused on kind of what's called vehicle to everything communication, where roadways and infrastructure will be set where you can send alerts and warnings called basic safety communications, route planning communications to vehicles. But now we're more tailored to like how do we adapt towards addressing traffic congestion, but also pedestrian and cyclist safety. However, those still apply to the long term of V2X, or where we want to focus on infrastructure to vehicle. So as long as we have our sensors in place, we're collecting that data, we're getting analytics, we're doing predictive analytics, getting that historical data, but also resharing that data, not just with city government, but the private businesses that are implementing these solutions. So we can help them understand analytics around safety or route planning, but also give them information on how they can make their autonomous vehicles getting to level 5 safer. So we identify stuff like near miss collisions at intersections along roadways against pedestrians and vehicles and cyclists, and optimize that data to help those creating the LVs for autonomous vehicles or level 5 autonomy to make it smarter and safer in their decision making for driving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes me think about, there's a Dutch Brothers that's on my way home. And every single time that I leave, that happens to be the time everyone wants to get that coffee, and it's right off of 7th. And it always backs up in this line. And I have to, either turn or accept that I'm going to temporarily be on a line at Dutch Brothers. And I always think to myself, I'm like, why do they continue to locate these in this spot? And, with autonomous vehicles, if it's mapping a route and it doesn't know that, every morning at 7:30, it's going to be backed up by 10 cars, that could be a continuous error that they run into, even if it is being done safely. So that seems, the synergy between your product is there.
Exactly. I think about that and Raising Cane's. Their lines are always ridiculous too. And those are the use cases and really down to edge cases about location specific data that we want to provide value for. Where most of our competitors are just looking at counts and detection at intersections. We're trying to explore what's really happening across the whole city. So city leaders can plan, city planners can plan, economic development, real estate, commercial real estate, you name it. Obviously, we've been talking about the AVs and how OEMs can use it, but there's a lot of use for where this data could be. And that's really where we're focusing now. We were primarily on B2G, but we've been moving more towards a B2B marketplace based on what we were learning more about how this data can be repurposed and utilized.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think about, like you had mentioned, the economic development area. There are so many intersections and corners. And one of the first things that realtors, when they're talking about the area, it says, this has a traffic rating of XYZ, or this number of cars drive by per hour. And to my knowledge, it's currently someone who's like counting or like how they actually get that information. And it just seems like such an obsolete way to do that. And it just makes more sense with what you're doing to be able to provide that data as someone's making a decision on what business should go where.
Correct. So our goal is to provide it 24/7 real time, so that you can actually be proactive in decision making versus making estimates. So you'll see them lay like strips in the middle of the road that you drive over. That's just a counter, and it's just counting how many cars are going, but it doesn't tell you how many cars are going which direction, how many cars are coming in and out of a location, if they're making left or right turn. That information gets really useful when you get down to like how to really solve how intersection data should flow, so that you can optimize and automate traffic flow between intersections, right? Like when I leave Scottsdale has cameras on almost all of their intersections. They've optimized their congestion to be one of the fastest travel times across the city in the Metro Valley. However, when I start heading to Arcadia from Scottsdale to Phoenix, I know I can hit in rush hour. It'll take 2 to 3 lights before I get there. So, each city has to do their part individually, but they also have to start doing it jointly together, because we are a integrated city where people commute from across multiple cities at a time. Well, how do we find the most optimal route planning for them? But how do we also make sure they're not sitting there waiting in light and at the traffic signal, and we're increasing our emissions? Because there's also a sustainability clean tech play that we're targeting in our impact, because we have to do better as a society. So we have to look at infrastructure and how it can change our driving behaviors, and not just today, but also the future.
Yeah. And so just backing up a little bit, you had said that you're starting to move more into B2B. Does that mean that your product would potentially be white labeled? Or do you think that it would be a tool? How would you see that fitting in directly business to business?
So there's partners that we're working with that have customers that are demanding or looking for the real-time traffic data. So we're able to go into our marketplace and stream our data in real time. So based on that demand or the corridors or the city that they're looking for, we can go and deploy our sensors and set up and stream that data. We use multiple sensors from camera, LiDAR, and radar, where we can obtain that data and analyze it, and then produce it through an API stream to that customer, to that endpoint.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. You're explaining it, and there's so many different use cases where this could be applied, and everything from servicing someone who might be vision impaired, to analytics and figuring out where locations should be put to reduce traffic flow, which would then reduce accidents, which would then save taxpayers money, and just all around lower insurance rates. It seems like a very important thing that should be happening soon. If you're more in this than I am, if you had to kind of take a wild guess, like, when do you think that this could be a part of someone's day-to-day life?
It's already happening. It's just not happening at a massive scale compared to like a country of China, who has these solutions in IoT. They're the leader in IoT in the world. So what we do is we take off-the-shelf sensors, we embed it into, or integrate it into an edge computing device, and then we embed our software, then we process the data. That data gets sent to the cloud in real time, and then we provide analytics and visualizations, and then predictive analytics to our customers. So it's starting to grow. Why we're moving more B2B is we're working with B2G governments. It just takes more time. They don't have funding. The pandemic really did a major setback from an economic growth for what they were looking to do in smart city and smart infrastructure. It's still there, but a lot of the initiatives are around focused on getting grant money only. So Biden's initiative is great, but doesn't mean that it's going to solve everything instantly. So on the B2B side, as you see in mobility with the e-scooters, those are all private companies, right? What they learned was they couldn't just go and I shouldn't say dump, but they shouldn't go and place their scooters everywhere and then being a nightmare for people that were using sidewalks, those with disabilities that had wheelchairs that couldn't get around them, and caused a lot of issues where they have to quickly adapt to how they were, having us as a customer position and park the scooters, and making more an adaptive approach to where we want to work with cities, but we also have to get our consumers to like act right when they're using this product. So we've kind of leveraged that model to say, well, if we work with the city and we know they need the data, we know we have private companies that want to buy this data, could there be a means where we can actually deploy this technology without the cities having the burden of the cost? And then the benefit from that is there's so much data. If you think about how much Amazon makes utilizing our roads, and all they do is pay sales tax. They don't pay any utilization for that information, and they're the ones that benefit the most. So can we be a data company that's helping cities move faster to this adoption, but also repurposing that data? And then my goal is, can we help the cities make revenue from this data?
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Especially when, I immediately think about, the initiatives surrounding trying to get companies to put headquarters in Arizona, or trying to get business expansions, especially international businesses coming to Arizona. So for us to be able to provide that information and say, if you put your business here and you're looking for exposure, these are numbers that we're not estimating, but we have seen and continue to be a true pattern. And I think that that's really a story that the city is just craving to be able to tell.
Correct. Yeah. So we still will work with cities, but we're also just focusing on like, where do the private businesses need the data and positioning it there, especially around like safety. We know, like, in one of the counties we're working with, I actually had a call with them this morning. Our end goal is, well, we know there's companies that want to use this data for AV simulation and training. If we can have permission to come in and set up a corridor that's miles long, are you okay with it, as long as you benefit from understanding how you're going to improve safety? And then there's other partners or companies we can work with that can help them plan how to redesign that street based on the data we're collecting. Now, just because we collected the data and we see that there was improvement doesn't mean that we can't have continuous data to keep making improvements, to keep reducing congestion, understanding how that the roadway may have been redesigned, how it was, the ROI came in, but also how do we adapt that technology and what's in the infrastructure to start moving towards connected vehicle corridors.
Yeah.
So for us, it's about a roadmap of the future and helping cities not have to burden the cost of learning the technology, implementing it, and managing it. Most city people are not going and getting their grad degree or PhD in AI technology, right? And they've worked in different departments and they move around, they get promoted. Our goal is to provide a value of data that helps them make better decision making, but also benefits other companies that are providing these solutions, but they just target it directly to consumers or businesses and not directly to customers.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, I mean, most city officials aren't going to have, you know, that level of in-depth knowledge that you guys have, and that's what you're providing. I would love to know a little bit more about how your team is, you know, structured and the people behind this.
Sure. So my background, I studied at University of Arizona, so bear down. I studied accounting and management information systems, and I went to work at Deloitte, which was really great because I had a lot of risk management, business, and IT cybersecurity experience there for about 5 years. But when I started Sensagrate, to be honest, I didn't know a clue about what this technology was. But I'm very resourceful, and I just stayed up at night reading. And then I reached out to people on LinkedIn that were experts. And then I asked them, like, who do I need to hire? What kind of questions do I need to ask? Because I went around all of the valley looking for people that were in the entrepreneur community, but there wasn't that many AI tech companies. So like when I was out of Galvanize, I almost went to San Francisco and was like, I'm going to go recruit out of San Francisco. And I actually stopped myself to say, no, I want to make an impact in our community. I don't want to eventually have to move this company to San Francisco. I really want to create something, especially as a Black founder, in our backyard, and like, it's possible. Let's find the people that can do it. So initially when our team started, it was people that I found through Intel or from, or that formerly left Intel, or those that were grad or PhD students at ASU. And then I just leveraged an online application for recruiting and found other students that were interested across. So we kind of had a team of founders, but also interns that were looking to grow themselves professionally before they went to market, that helped us really get our product launched and going through that learning curve of how to do deep learning, machine learning, CNN networks, and other aspects. But what I did is I took the initiative on the hardware and really learn about LiDAR sensors. So I'm not an engineer that understands LiDAR, but I really, really dove in, understood the technology, and met with vendors. And I started by just creating a questionnaire about what are we looking for and validating against our technology. But a lot of those vendors 2 to 3 years ago are now partners of ours.
Wow. Well, I love the fact that you decided to look for talent within Arizona. I mean, that is just a great thing to be able to want to bring that to our city. And I mean, it sounds like it was also for the benefit, because it sounds like Arizona is relatively friendly to the product that you're trying to put out.
Correct. And we have some projects that we're working towards. We're down in Tucson. We have another great project opportunity for the first carbon-free zone in Arizona. There's a company called Figo Fino, where they'll have a sustainability distribution center for liquor distribution, and the site will be EcoSol, and it'll be all solar panels, electric vehicle delivery, bike delivery, and then there's some aspect in the future where we can have sidewalk robots be part of delivery, and putting our infrastructure to make that possible. So it's a minority-owned led business, so it's really powerful to me to have that impact, where we are part of a incubator right now called the LA Clean Tech Incubator that really focuses on how clean tech can make a change. And we've honestly seen, since we've been in the program since end of March, we've seen a lot more opportunities that we didn't even think about exploring, just based on where that market and ecosystem is growing. So we're really excited, because those are things that beyond that are part of logistics and transportation, but we never even thought of, that also tie into the infrastructure that we're doing.
Absolutely. And I mean, honestly, this even makes me think about, as you're describing partnerships and working with different groups, I remember hearing of this one startup called Cul-de-sac, which is like the first car-free city. I mean, it looks like you've maybe heard of them. I mean, I could see your product, making other ideas like that possible.
Yeah, they're a company I would love to talk to because there's going to be a curbside management solution and traffic flow, and just understanding if they are moving away of having to have people's footprint of our emissions and stuff be of value to add to society. We also have to understand like what kind of cars or emissions are happening there, and how does it decrease from that location. Right. So like one thing I wish I would have known was like, all right, what's the emissions in that environment there, and what changes after that gets built. Right.
Yeah.
So my question was, are you guys using vehicles on site that are carbon free?
Yeah, that's interesting. Different ways. I mean, there's so many different things that you can tackle with this. It's just like not a matter of, what should you be doing this? It's, what should you do first? There's so many parts to it.
Correct. And like I was saying, we've been focusing on B2G, and we have another pedestrian safety project in City of Phoenix that we're working on. We're just waiting to get confirmation for the grant. And those things take time because they are working with cities, but we found more opportunities moving to the B2B this year that will help us move faster and really implement our solution a lot quicker.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to run low on time, but I mean, I've just got, two more burning questions for you. So
Sure.
as you're kind of mapping out this product, I mean, I'd love to just kind of know, what is the one thing where you're like, yes, this is the mission that we're going to accomplish with this. This is the outcome that we're going to get from it. And then how can people learn more about your company?
Sure. So right now our focus is to get to 10 cities across the U.S. That have congestion issues and safety issues with pedestrians and cyclists. So we're targeting that by either doing pilots with them directly, or for the B2B opportunities, there's some matchmaking for data collection that we're working with. From there, we plan to grow to hopefully 100 locations where we have, we call them IoT nodes, because we basically can set up and deploy the sensors on an IoT device as long as there's existing infrastructure. But we also have a mobile application where we can put it on a kind of a lighting tower to position. And then from there, we really want to expand across those cities and be able to really be in as many corridors or intersection as possible, and grow it and scale it from there. So being in Phoenix is one market, Tucson, and then LA will get a pilot, or will be in two of the top 5 largest cities in the US. So we're really excited about that because there's a lot of potential growth in both those markets. And then how to kind of just find out about Sensagrate and what we're doing. We're pretty active on our LinkedIn and announcing things that we're doing with partnerships and projects. And then we always post our new demos of our technology and our capabilities on our YouTube page. So you can find both of those links on our website. In the bottom left corner, as you scroll down, you'll be able to find the links to gain access there. We love that people are following us, because we're getting more and more followers, which means that like we're catching the eyes of people. Even one of our competitors started following me personally on LinkedIn, so I knew that I promoted some stuff that was caught their eye. So I know we're heading in the right direction, and I just hope that we're able to improve and solve the challenges that cities and citizens need today to make a better future for tomorrow.
I love it. I love everything about this. And frankly, I hate driving. So I just really hope that we progress to the point where I can just not have a car and not have to worry about it. So thank you for trying to check that off of my list of things that I don't want to do in life anymore.
So we're already making a personal impact to people.
Yeah,
so.
no, I love it. I'm truly excited about this, and I loved having a conversation. And thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Miranda. I really appreciate it.